In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
This episode brings you a raw, first-hand experience of a female startup founder in the consumer packaged goods, or CPG space. Zoë Levin is our guest this week on Money Tales. Unlike digital startups that can scale at lightning speed, Zoe's company, Bim Bam Boo, faces a different reality, one where every roll of toilet paper requires strategic financial maneuvering. With investors chasing AI and capital for consumer goods in short supply, she's had to be resourceful, resilient, and relentless. But for Zoe, the stakes are even higher than just business success. After growing up in a household where financial volatility was the norm, she's determined to do things differently, ensuring that no matter how unpredictable entrepreneurship gets, her family's stability is non-negotiable. In our conversation, Zoe shares the hard truths of raising capital, managing risk, and the lessons she carries forward from her father's high-stakes ventures. Zoe, also known as the Toilet Paper Queen, is the CEO and founder of Bim Bam Boo, a tree-free paper company on a mission to wipe away deforestation. Her impact-driven leadership style has saved over 1.2 million pounds of trees. From Kickstarter to kicking ass at grocery stores nationwide, she has navigated a 900% increase in growth and became the #1 selling tree-free toilet paper brand at Whole Foods.
Here are 3 key money topics Zoe hits on in this conversation. First, treat life like a balance sheet. Count your assets, calculate your moves, and optimize what's in front of you. Second, watch out for the startup Kool-Aid effect. If you're a founder, stay grounded by constantly assessing your risk tolerance, especially when your personal and company finances start to blur together. And third, the extra hurdles female founders face in the funding landscape, where the stakes are often higher and there are fewer safety nets. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Zoë Levin's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
Sandy, I was with some friends this past weekend, and we were having a really important money conversation with one of our friends. She grew up in the New York area, has lived in LA when we were in grad school and just stayed there. Loved it, but ended up moving to recently, maybe during COVID, to Florida and really loving it.
Warm there. Sounds good.
It is. I know, exactly. It's warm. Part of why she loves it so much is she is in a high-rise building and it's super social. She was talking about all the events, all the friendships, really a neat, diverse group, just wonderful. And why this relates to money is she brought up that she's also interested in investing in finding her home or investing in real estate for herself. But then the conversation twisted to like the ROI of life. Maybe buying a home or an apartment condo is a good financial decision, but it's not a good personal decision for her.
Because the lifestyle in the building is so attractive to her?
Oh, it's just wonderful and just absolutely perfect for her and her life stage. And it was an important conversation for this group to have and let her talk through what her values were. And I think it was very obvious that she came to her own conclusion that it's not the right time to buy a home, maybe an investment property if she has enough money. I appreciated that emphasis of why investing in property might not be the right time for her, given this beautiful situation of her living situation.
It sounds like a nice crowdsourced conversation that gave her some new ideas.
It was a special money conversation because it highlighted that it's not just about the return of the dollars, it's return on life.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to housing. I've seen that with clients a lot. Sometimes there's the should versus the want. And you really need to think about more than just the numbers, to your point.
I love that having a money conversation helped highlight that.
Well, thanks for sharing, Cammie. It sounds like a really good one.
It was special. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our Money Tales guest today, Zoë Levin. It's fantastic to be talking to you on Money Tales.
It's an honor and delight to be here today. I'm so excited to share a little bit about my relationship with money.
Would you start by introducing yourself? And in doing so, share a couple pivotal moments that really influenced who you are.
I am Zoë Levin, the toilet paper queen.
Levine, sorry about that.
That's okay. It's a mistake that most people make because it's spelled Levin. But Levin doesn't rhyme with toilet paper queen. And my family has always gone with Levine. But I'm Zoë Levin, the toilet paper queen. I'm the CEO and founder of Bim Bam Boo. Bim Bam Boo is a tree-free paper company. So we take the fastest growing grasses on earth, primarily bamboo, and transform them into sustainable paper products that are distributed nationwide at retailers like Target, Whole Foods Market, to name a few. I am also the daughter of a serial entrepreneur that majorly has shifted and impacted my thoughts and feelings around money. So I grew up with an example of someone who always figured out how to make it work. And that has very much shaped how I've approached building Bim Bam Boo.
As you're growing up, you're exposed to an entrepreneurial environment. Money sounded like it wasn't something that was to hold you back. It was about chasing what you felt was the right business, the right approach. Tell us more about how that was when you were young and how it impacted you.
For some context, because I think we can all interpret someone who grew up with an entrepreneurial parent in different ways. My mother is an artist and my father is an entrepreneur. And my father is the type of entrepreneur that always hunted whales, not like the family business running that, but rather IPOing and building new manufacturing and really, really big endeavors. A good example of this would be Zomax. So Zomax, my dad named after me and my sibling. Zomax was one of the largest CD-ROM manufacturers in the world. It takes a pretty innovative thinker to be like, what's the future of media? And then build manufacturing to suit to that scale. One of the first IPOs my dad did was Zomax. And also taking a public company private again, because realizing like, oh my gosh, running a public company is a whole different set of regulation and standards. So that was also an interesting thing to navigate. But there've been different structures of these companies that he started throughout my childhood and to young adulthood. And I always was the kid that was running around the office. I was the kid that was in the conference room, whiteboarding, putting together new business ideas, hearing about all of the business trips and sourcing trips, being able to deal with, let's say, returned inventory. My dad would be like, okay, get in the back of the warehouse, peel the discount stickers off these CDs, resticker, relabel them so they could be resold. But really understanding there were a couple themes in my childhood that I took into adulthood. If you were to look at this from a values and assets standpoint, if you were to look at your life like a balance sheet, really understanding what do you have and what can you do with what you have and how do you maneuver that? He taught me that in multiple ways, whether it was, let's say, getting an SBA loan and leveraging one of our homes.
Was he talking with you in detail about that?
This is very much a part of my story. Maybe it wasn't in detail walking me through every little bit, but there were all these moments that his business life intertwined into our personal life, our family life. A couple clear examples of this. One was, unfortunately, an insider trading incident that went on with Zomax, the company that IPO'd. That was a full investigation that drastically impacted our family. He was not charged with insider trading, but the CEO was. That was one of those things where it was like, oh gosh, you can imagine he had a lot of assets tied up, a lot of stock tied up in this company. He had put a lot of his time and energy into developing that. He was the chairman of the board at the time. It was published in all the papers, a lot of legal. It was a lot of, no, you can't go to your friend's house because this is too stressful. We need to focus on this right now.
It sounds incredibly stressful. How old were you at the time?
9, 10.
So what were you taking away from this situation in particular?
This was a weird one because I didn't even understand, like, what is a stock? What is a public company? Really, I knew the company as a building that I would go to often between childcare needs or whatever. It'd be like, yep, after school, come over to just run around the halls, deal with the Post-it notes, play with the copy machines. But I wasn't really understanding that this had major implications till later in life where I was like, oh, that's what insider trading is. Someone ended up in jail, and it was someone who ended up as a part of our inner circle as a family. They were coming to all of the holiday parties. I was going to all of the company parties, and it had huge implications for the stock value, as you can imagine as well. From a very early age, I understood there was a right way and a wrong way to do business, even with the best intentions and feeling like you have the utmost trust and confidence in your team. There's always the possibility that there's someone that's in your community with unknown outcomes. Insider trading specifically, I didn't know much about it at the time and still don't know a ton about it. It's an interesting concept. If you know something's going to go down with your company, you have to act so carefully in the public eye around how do you navigate that?
How has that influenced you as an entrepreneur and the businesses you're building?
I love to surround myself with advisors and community that I can be as transparent as possible about. It was funny. I had a therapy session a while ago, 5 years ago now, and it was with a horrible therapist, wrong fit for me. But she did say this one thing that really stuck with me, which is, how are you supposed to get the help you need and the support you need if you can't be honest with those around you? It's a really good question for us to ask as it comes to like posturing, especially with finance. I think we all love to believe that we can navigate life, what we wear, the car we drive, the house we live in, the neighborhoods that we choose to live in, the communities we get involved in. All of this has to do with the identity that we all create around who we want to be, not necessarily who we are, but who we want to be. As it relates to this idea that we all wear a mask when it comes to our money story and our identity, it's a lot easier to go about life with this idea that, like, it's fine, it's okay, or I have it figured out. But the reality is, money isn't something we often talk about together, especially interpersonally. It's this taboo subject, both from a business perspective and interpersonally. We have the opportunity to come together and be honest about navigating these things, because this is a human truth in everything. It may feel like you're alone, but there is guaranteed someone out there who has this exact same experience you've been through. And so, especially entrepreneurially, I need to surround myself with peers that truly get it. Bim Bam Boo is under 10 million in revenue. We are growing fast. CPG investment right now is very, very challenging to lock in. People are like, I want to throw money in AI. I don't want to throw it in to a CPG company.
It's a hard space for venture, especially.
It's a super hard space. And I've chosen a very challenging route. And it requires a lot of maneuvering for me personally to support. And of course, a very creative, nimble approach to how I am engaging in the company financially too, and guiding our strategic moves forward, because we have limited capital. It's a capitally growth constrained scenario for us. That's an inventory based business that requires a lot of capital to grow and scale, versus like a digital product where you can just be like, yep, we're going to get a bunch of users and copy paste that all the way up. When you're dealing with inventory, it's a different beast. I have so many stories about how I grew up in our finances because it was just so volatile. The insider trading is one juicy thing, but there's other stuff that happened in my childhood growing up with a very entrepreneurial father who's running 3 to 5 ventures at a time and watching him navigate this because I kind of got a firsthand view into purchase order financing, SBA loans, inventory financing, fundraising, IPO, taking IPO to privatizing the company again, buying back all that stock. What I learned, I think, the most from my dad is that life is going to always throw shit at you. There's going to be good and bad seasons. The best way to look at planning for the future is through creativity and leaning into that.
I love that you just said that and you have boxes of Bim Bam Boo product behind you. This is the toilet paper. So I just have to point that out for listeners. It sounds like you learned a lot of resilience from your father, how to navigate different business situations and to take charge of them. Yet you still wanted to become an entrepreneur yourself. When did you know that you wanted to take that path?
I would not wish entrepreneurship on anyone. Any baby entrepreneur that comes to me and they're like, I want to start my business. They have these big eyes, bushy tail. They're so excited and enchanted with what to come will be likely the hardest path they have ahead in their life. I believe there are certain people that are not made for this. And I say this because this life I chose, if I could go back and do it all again, I don't know if I would, because it is so hard. It really is an incredibly challenging choice to say, I'm not going to have potentially a steady paycheck. I'm not going to know where my health insurance is coming from. I don't know exactly for family planning, especially because I'm a woman and a younger woman trying to figure out, can I have a kid? Could I afford to have a kid? How would that look and feel? There's so many factors that went into me becoming a founder myself. Looking back, I don't think I calculated them all at once. It was as they came. It was one little thing at a time. Frankly, I started Bim Bam Boo in 2020 when I had the great toilet paper shortage. I don't necessarily believe in luck, but I believe in opportunity meeting preparedness. And that is something I had. I saw the business opportunity. I was already positioned very, very well because I had filed in 2019 to start Bim Bam Boo and really take that and scale it up into the market. I had all of my ducks in a row ready to rock. And I had just enough knowledge of purchase order financing and negotiation and distribution and all of those channels to understand that I had a once in a lifetime opportunity to get this, pun intended, rolling. I was like, flush, yes, let's do it. This is the moment in time for me to go. If I want to go, this is it. I had a great deal of knowledge in how to maneuver that financially. I started Bim Bam Boo. I think I've put in 60,000 of my own money now to date. But the initial spend was very much, let's get a Kickstarter going. Let's see how to mitigate this risk. Can I get my first manufacturing run supported by people who want this product, and then got that into market and then used that as leverage to support scaling into wholesale distribution. And then I was able to maneuver those purchase orders and finance those for that initial launch. It was very, very bootstrappy through my first million. And then having the example I did, knowing that my father hunted whales, I wanted to hunt elephants. Figuring out how do I take that to the next level, I knew that we needed additional capital, likely from people who deeply understood this space. My father has started multiple ventures and sunsetted some of them. But one of the lessons he taught me, it was you can make money and lose money. You can make millions and lose millions. That is a very, very real outcome. As a founder, you have to decide your comfortability with your liability. So how much risk? It's always going to be risky, but how much risk are you comfortable with?
And how did you answer that for yourself, Zoe?
It's a question I ask myself every day as I navigate growing and scaling this thing. As the numbers get bigger, you have more exposure. This is where it gets really blurry. The lines for a founder are super duper blurry because your personal financial situation becomes intertwined with your business. You have to look at what is your personal balance sheet and what is your business's balance sheet and figuring out what exposure you're comfortable with holding, because it's very easy to have a good day. That could be Walmart calling me and saying, Zoe, we want you to come to Bentonville. And I knock the meeting out of the park. And it's my job the next day to navigate what kind of exposure, what kind of liability do I personally want to have in this next stage of this venture. Also, as you grow and fundraise, your ownership changes. So you have other fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders and stakeholders that are also relying on you to navigate this with the utmost diligence. And that can change, whether that's new information coming in. Trump's tariff is a great scenario for this, especially in CPG where you're dealing with inventory. But all of a sudden, anything on my balance sheet now with let's just say an additional 10% tariff or a 25% tariff, theoretically, that stuff sitting on the balance sheet, while I have an established baseline for that value, it's already gone up because anything I wanted to order would be valued at a higher rate. So it is something you have to ask yourself, not just once, what am I okay with right now? Or what am I okay with this quarter? But you also have to ask, what is my spouse okay with? What is my family okay with? And those were things in my home growing up we never talked about. It was not a conversation about, we have these 5 ventures that our family is, whether we like it or not, intertwined into because we have liabilities. Let's say that's a home being leveraged so we could support funds, or a second mortgage where those funds are being invested in a company, for example, or credit cards. But there are all these ways that we see founders where if it's a Venn diagram, you have your personal life over here, your personal finances, you have your business finances here, and then there's this middle point where they meet. And you see a lot of founders operating in this way. And I think culturally we glorify that. I pawned my wedding ring so that I could get my first purchase order funded. Oh my gosh, you believed in yourself just that much that you were willing to do that. I think that's so sad. I think this goes for both men and women. I don't mean to genderfy this. If we look at, historically speaking, the lack of capital, the lack of investment in women-owned companies specifically, I think that women are taking bigger risks. We get paid less. You can imagine if you were to start a venture, you're dealing with a pot that's I forget how much less we get paid, 30% less theoretically, 70 cents for every dollar. But if you think about it that way, you're already starting your company with a smaller pot. The funds you need to get your business off the ground, which in CPG, I mean, there's a lot of people who have different benchmarks on this, but I think the going rate right now is about $1 million to get a CPG company off the ground. I think on the low end, you could probably do it for about 500, but you're dealing with a smaller pot to begin with to start your venture. And then once you get going, once you have proof of concept, once you go out to, let's say, fundraise or even get a deal done with a bank, you're likely dealing with having your partner on board for that. If you want to sign away your home for an SBA loan, which is something they don't talk about at all. I want to get funding. I want to get a bank loan. Banks operate in a way where they need to have everything secured by an asset. So you may not have accumulated enough from an asset profile to even make that possible. There's a lot of challenges that I think women founders specifically encounter that prompt these conversations in dynamics where women may not always be the one in that household. That matriarch may not be holding a ton of financial power or be prompting financial conversations with their partner in a way that allows you to navigate this from a place of power.
I really appreciate you highlighting this and also demonstrating through your own business and life trajectory that it's possible. I think that's really important. But you're also very real. It's hard. Your answer to risk is an important one. Money runs throughout your whole story, but I'm not hearing you driven by money. So as a founder, what are you driven by?
I want to do something really big with my little life.
That's the elephant.
That's the elephant. The last venture that my dad started was the very first tree-free paper manufacturer in America. That was his last venture. And I was so inspired. It was like, out of all the businesses my dad had done, I was just like, this is so cool. This is so fantastic. And it was also the business that totally ruined our family financially. Everything was on the line and we lost it all. It was also something I really believed in. Personally, I was very aligned with the sustainable factors. I was super aligned with the technology, this idea that we're using, whether it's agricultural byproducts like these waste products and repurposing them into goods that we use every day, but also the category. I've been in CPG now for about 15 years across all different parts of CPG, food, hard goods, pet, and now, of course, paper. What I saw was paper is cool because it's something we use every day, multiple times a day, in all different aspects of our life. So that's the package that arrives at your doorstep from Amazon is in a box. That's the toilet paper we use every day. That's the napkin, the menstrual care, the diapers. There's so many different products made with paper. It is one of the most ubiquitous things we have as consumers that we need and use. That for me was like my big aha. I learned a lot from watching his venture fail. And I learned it both personally and professionally about how to do things differently. I've spent so much time in therapy unpacking this because what I experienced in my childhood was so, as I mentioned, volatile. When you are not sure if you're going to have a house to live in. Yeah, you have multiple homes, but when every single one of these homes is leveraged to the hilt and you're getting letters from the bank that they're going to come, you start to think a lot differently about what it means to have a home. What is a home if not an asset? And an asset you can leverage to do things you want with. But when things go south, you need to be prepared for that. That was a huge moment of instability. My mom grew up in a very similar situation where she at one point was in an orphanage. They had lost their home. They had been through a lot of housing instability. And that is a common thread that I notice in my life. When it comes to my risk and exposure, the number one thing for me is making sure that my family is taken care of. Everything could hit the fan, but I need to know that we have a place to live. We're not rent broke or mortgage broke, that we are set up for a place of stability. That's something when it comes to my personal life has absolutely changed and shifted how I've done things differently than my dad. My definitions for myself are that is my number one. We have to have housing. It's really easy for a founder and entrepreneur to drink their own Kool-Aid. When you get back to your advisory community, your investors, your peers, it's really important that we have these conversations with honesty, with transparency, with vulnerability, because most of us in this situation have a lot on the line that we're maneuvering and navigating and constantly calibrating for. And it's important that we have other people around us to ask these types of questions that we're posing here today, which is, what is your comfortability with risk right now? How do you define that for yourself? And what do you think that would look like if you had a kid in the mix or you were to get that Walmart purchase order or whatever that is? I think it's really important for us to have these conversations in community.
So you've done such a great job modeling all of that in the conversation today. Tell us, what's your next money conversation going to be and who's it going to be with?
I love talking about money with my friends. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, especially because I'm in my mid-30s now and figuring out, especially during this time, exactly what to invest in, where we're investing, what our priorities are. What you were saying before, this idea of what is your ROI on life? What's your ROI on your focus? What's your ROI on your time? These are more than just numbers. I have like a budget template I've prepared that we work on in our household, and that has a cash flow that is attached to that. Like I run my personal finances very similar to my business. It's a very high level budget, money in, money out, and then dispersal of funds into different investments, and then also our financial priorities. And sharing that with a pal was really wonderful because we were able to talk through, well, this is where we're at in life. If we have a kid, we're looking at doing this. We are interested in another property. What could that look like? We talked through shared property ownership. Owning a property alone is a lot of work, especially in light of the climate crisis and looking at the volatility in weather patterns, insurance specifically, because as we look at real estate, especially, that becomes a whole other layer is what kind of exposure are you willing to have on a property that may not be able to be insured as it could be in the past? And some of the trends around real estate ownership and climate. That was my last one. And it was super interesting to get to unpack with others in my circle.
What a great conversation. And it sounds like you have them all the time. You are a leader in productive, vulnerable money conversations. Thank you for doing that. Would you share, Zoe, where is the best place for our listeners to find you?
I am a LinkedIn girly. I'm totally obsessed with LinkedIn. I would love if people found me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Zoë Levin, the toilet paper queen, if you search it there.
It's a great tagline. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. You're really great, Zoe. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening. And leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.